Hello and welcome to Dare to Know, interviews with quality and reliability thought leaders. I'm Tim Rogers, and today I'm pleased to welcome Doug Lehr. Doug Lehr is the founder and principal of Integris Technology Services, LLC. He has over 41 years of experience in the development of downhole tools for oil and gas wells, and has built a track record of success in technical management, innovation, and industry leadership. Doug has developed numerous products for oil and gas well applications, including composite frac plugs and high pressure, high temperature, or HPHT tools. He's authored 21 technical papers, articles, and editorials, and holds 29 U.S. patents in the area of HPHT tools, composite tools, downhole communication methods, and many others. Doug has lectured extensively on the topics of shale wells and HPHT applications and is recognized as an industry expert on both topics. Doug was selected by the Society of Petroleum Engineers to be an SPE Distinguished Lecturer on the topic of multi-zone isolation. Doug has also chaired SPE workshops on HPHT applications in 2014 and 2015. Additionally, Doug and his team have received industry recognition for engineering achievement of the Hart's E&P Meritorious Engineering Award and World Oil Award. He is the completions editor for the Journal of Petroleum Technology and a member of API Product Standard Committees 11D1, 19TT, and 19AC. Doug holds a BS degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Texas and an MBA in finance and marketing from the University of Houston. Doug Lehr, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Tim, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I look forward to our discussion today.
So Doug, you've been involved in new product development and design for reliability for some time. What advice would you give to reliability engineers who participate in new product development? How can they be more effective?
Well, Tim, there's several ways in which they can become more effective. One is that they should take the time to understand the product and its applications. They should also become familiar with the economics of the business in general. Learning about end user expectations for reliability is also critical. And on this point, the definition of reliability, as we know, will vary from product to product. And it's very important to know what the definition is. Some products are designed for a short service life, while others must have a very long service life. But knowing which applies in which instance to which product is a key. Reliability engineers must also be engaged as early as possible in any new product development, because by engaging early and understanding end user expectations and the product economics, the reliability engineer can make cost-effective recommendations that will maximize his or her value to the team.
It seems like such common sense to me, Doug. What are we saying that reliability engineers are a little too focused on the science, but not enough on the business?
That is my experience, and my experience has also been that once the product engineers and the product marketing people engage in advance with the reliability engineers, the reliability engineers now understand the end user expectations for the product. They know how it's going to be used. They start understanding some of the, we'll say, environmental aspects that are out of the OEM's control that might compromise the product. And what it helps them do is focus in on recommendations for the team for achieving intrinsic reliability in the product. And my experience is once they have this understanding that their recommendations are very, very helpful and value adding rather than just highly theoretical.
That makes sense. Doug, I spent a lot of time working on inkjet printers when I was at HP. And when we did new product designs, we followed a product development management system. I suspect that most people working on hardware have a product development management system of some kind. Why isn't this working? Why do we still see reliability problems?
Well, Tim, let me first congratulate you on the HP inkjet printers because I've always thought very highly of them as products. I own several of them. Um, but in general, and I've seen it many times in the upstream energy business, there is always pressure to expedite engineering work, complete the prototype testing, get to market, and see the revenue. Um, Now, because of this, product de-risking historically and even today is often ignored or it's inadequate, and this leads to problems in laboratory testing, which then leads to project delays, and ultimately this increases the risk of failure during product introduction or commercialization. Of course, an objective here is to have a clean product introduction and avoid brand damage. Um, so I always recommend a longer planning or conceptual phase, which enables early risk discovery and mitigation, which keeps the project on schedule, and it helps set the stage for a successful product launch.
Doug, it kind of reminds me of the old saying: there never seems to be time to do it right the first time, but there's plenty of time to fix the problem later.
Very true, very true. And I have seen this many, many times in the upstream energy business. In fact, um, one of the things about the upstream business is there always seems to be time to fix these problems in the field should they rear their ugly head. And I've
Right.
seen this promote a hero culture whereby those who were assigned to fix the problem and get the customer smiling again receive tremendous recognition. Um, but this kind of philosophy that says, ignore the problems and we'll fix it later, it ultimately leads to low frequency or maybe even high frequency, but high impact product failures, which are increasingly expensive to mitigate in the world of oil and gas exploration and development.
Well, I was just
Uh,
going to say, in your industry, the cost of failure is extremely high. Uh, you know, this problem of fire prevention versus fighting, or the cost of risk mitigation or risk avoidance versus the cost of some kind of uncertain future event is one of the big challenges that a lot of people face. And again, this is a particularly vexing problem in your world, where the cost of failure is extremely high. How does that change the way you look at reliability testing and risk planning?
well, to give you a feel first for what the liability can be, if we consider an offshore well that costs billions of dollars to drill and complete, the cost of fixing a product failure after it's been installed in that well is prohibitive. And here's why. The products I'm familiar with may be used in a 4 mile deep well, right? So that's in excess of 20,000 feet deep. This well would be drilled from a floating vessel operating in 6 to 9,000 foot of water, 400 miles away from the coastline, which means that support and logistics is handled by support vessels and helicopters. Ultimately, this type of an operation costs about $1 million per day for the operator, who is the end user or consumer of downhole tools. So, just one failure or even a malfunction in a well such as this can wipe out an entire product line, a product line's entire annual profit and impair future sales opportunities. Um, so the mentality that says, "Don't worry about this; it'll probably, keyword probably, never ever happen,"
Right, right.
and if it does, we'll find the time to fix it, is really a non-starter in today's upstream energy business. And so I would very simply say, I wish that there's another wise saying could be embraced at all times, which is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And risk discovery and mitigation, particularly through the use of FMEA and periodic design risk assessments and reliability testing based on those FMEAs and assessments, And other design for reliability activities are proven for avoiding these costly types of failures, and they need to be practiced with consistency. And my observation is that they're not practiced with consistency at the moment.
Let me ask you a little bit more about FMEAs, Doug. You've done a fair number of FMEAs over the years, and of course, FMEA's as a tool has been around for quite a while. What would you recommend to ensure that FMEAs are successful? What makes for a successful FMEA, and how can we get more value from this?
That's a great question. Many people think that they know what FMEA is all about and how to conduct it, but for the most part, many of them do not. So, first of all, I would say conduct FMEAs. That would be a great first step right there.
Let's try it. Yeah.
Exactly. We've got nothing to lose but just a few man hours. Um, the basics of FMEAs are beyond the facilitator and beyond people who are practitioners. The basics are usually not well understood by other stakeholders. And I've always found that communicating to stakeholders in advance a list of expectations for everything from scope to time commitment to meeting etiquette to the deliverables is very, very helpful in ensuring that the meeting is productive. Uh, Next thing I've seen is that many FMEAs fail because of poor scoping. So
Uh-huh.
I would recommend that the FMEA scope be reviewed and reviewed and reviewed and is manageable, and that it's understood by all stakeholders.
So, Doug, do you think that there are folks that assume that FMEA is just an engineering exercise, and we don't need to bring business people into these meetings? I mean, is that part of the problem?
It is indeed part of the problem, Tim. It is perceived um, among some of the teams I've worked with as just another, as you point out, just another engineering exercise, the same way as is, making calculations, conducting an failure, or rather, finite elements analysis,
Right.
and conducting lab testing. And one of the pitfalls there is that they assume that an FMEA can be conducted in isolation by one person. It's a matter of just filling out severity, occurrence, and detectability values, and then writing down something rather, um, I'll use the word unaccountable for
Right.
how they're going to mitigate this particular risk. Um, and so that has to change. That um, has to be understood that FMEA is kind of a team sport. It's a team activity, and we have to bring in SMEs, and not a lot of them, but typically between 4 and 8, depending upon the complexity of the product. Bring those SMEs in because they're going to be the ones who are most qualified to identify design risks, and in the case of maybe an installation or a PFMEA, process FMEA,
Good point.
risk risks associated with um, instructions for installation and things like that.
I think there's just a lot of people that think FMEA is an end in itself. We filled out the form, they pat each other on the back, we can put this in a file somewhere. It's not the end, it's the beginning.
It really is the beginning, and the key here is that once it's conducted correctly, it's going to generate a lot of recommended actions. And the recommended actions are, they're developed and agreed on by the SMEs in attendance. But to achieve the value from the recommended actions, the product team must commit to implementation of all of them. And I guess a final word I would say about implementation is that having a workflow that confirms implementation is also recommended.
Oh, good
Uh,
point. There needs to
yeah,
be some follow up, right?
most definitely. I've worked with a lot of teams who thought that, uh, as you pointed out, conducting the FMEA was it. We've had the meeting, we're finished, check the box, move on to the next engineering activity. But in point, as you point out, it's just the beginning, because let's say you have a product that has a parts list of, let's say, 50 components. Some of those are structural in nature, some are elastomeric seals, some are fasteners, et cetera, et cetera. You may have in a poorly de-risked design coming into it, you may end up with, I don't know, you may end up with 100 recommended actions, and some of those are going to be high impact or high risk, and so they
Right.
must be addressed. And if they're not addressed, if they're just ignored and the project moves to completion, well, then there's been no value created by conducting the FMEA.
It's not just about the design. I like what you said about PFMEA as well. I mean, we need to make sure that our processes are also de-risked.
No doubt, no doubt. I see this most often um, with the legacy products for which there is maybe 3 or 4 years of commercialization history. And, you find out in kind of the typical case that initially everything went fine. Um, but then as you start deploying the product into different regions, and in the case of a global oil field services business, into other countries where you have different languages, cultural norms with regards to training, frankly, different levels of competencies
Sure.
among the technicians, the PFMEA becomes far more important because typically, you've developed the product with sponsorship from a certain region, and it may be the US, or in the last 30 years, it could have been maybe the North Sea sector related to the UK or Norway. They're
Right.
sponsoring the project. So they tend to be very intimate with the development of the product throughout its 12 or 18 months project duration. So by the time they receive the product for the initial trials, they're very intimate with it. And whether it's written down or not, they already have a very good feel for what the vulnerabilities of the product are. Well, then you go through 3 or 6 months of introduction there, and the project is green lighted for commercialization. And so the next sale is going to occur in the Far East. Maybe it's going to be in Australia. Maybe it's going to be in Argentina, offshore Brazil. But the point is that unless that process for installation, in this case, has been sufficiently de-risked, there are going to be problems with those other teams and other locations using the installation instructions.
Even though they're using exactly the same hardware. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Doug, earlier you were talking about the need for reliability engineers to better understand the business implications of their recommendations and decisions. That sounds good in principle, but what can we do to help reliability engineers become more business savvy?
Tim, this is a great point. This really speaks to not only acquiring tenure on the job in your role, but also using that time wisely to learn more about things outside of your comfort zone, if you will. So I would say to reliability engineers, first take all opportunities to interact with your product line engineers, your manufacturing colleagues, and your marketing colleagues, and other colleagues in the business, and ask them about how your recommendations affect product cost and lead time. Next, I would take every opportunity to learn about applications for the products you're supporting and understand what creates value for the customer. What are they interested in seeing in terms of reliability? What are they interested in seeing in terms of serviceability and things like that? Sources of this knowledge are not only within your company, but they include professional societies, conferences, industry publications, and meetings with customers, whether they're virtual or face to face. On that last point, talk to your marketing and sales colleagues and see if you're able to tag along with them to one or more meetings with their customers. I guarantee you that they will be very surprised at what they hear coming from the customer's perspective. And it's not a matter of criticism, it's just a matter of the customer, if you're willing to listen and ask the right questions, will tell you what's important to them.
Boy, I agree. I mean, I just seeing how these systems work in the field, I think just makes you a better reliability engineer.
Yes.
Understanding how they're installed, how they're being used, how they're being maintained.
You just mentioned another great area of learning, and that is field training. So whether you're on a formal field training program or whether you decide to try and get your boss to give you 2 weeks to go spend some time with your service organization, doing that once, but hopefully periodically, so that you expand your knowledge base in the area of service and installation and the field operations, as you refer to. Doing that will also enhance your knowledge of the product and customer expectations for the product. Also, everything that we design can be compromised some way, some way, and sometimes it occurs through mishandling in our own operations locations. So knowing how the product is not only used but abused inadvertently through nobody's fault,
Sure.
learning what it has to withstand and put up with as a product is also very important to this set of knowledge that you mentioned.
Sounds great. Doug, thanks so much for being with us today.
Tim, this has been a great experience for me, and I hope that what we've talked about is going to be very helpful for those who listen to this podcast. And if there's any follow-up questions from anyone, I'm always available.
Well, we'll provide your contact information in the show notes.
Thank you, Tim.
You bet. That was Doug Lehr, founder and principal of Integris Technology Services, LLC. To learn more, please visit Integris, that's INTEGRIS LLC.com. This is Tim Rogers. Thanks for joining us.